Dear participants, a warm welcome to the very first webinar of this series, Mastering the Digital Workflow in Your Own Practice, with a new face at the Morita Academy. I'm very happy to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Bassam Hassan, who will today talk about digital intraoral scanning and cone beam CT. And this, I have to be honest, I have to read it from my screen because there is so much to talk about Bassam, and I would just forget some important things. So Dr. Hassan is a prosthodontist recognized by several associations and societies, and he's also an academic researcher in digital implants prosthodontics with more than 50 publications. He's also an experienced speaker in international venues, which we might hear today as we listen to him. And he worked for 3 years as a full-time assistant professor at the Department of General and Specialized Dentistry at ACTA, and for 3 years part-time as an assistant professor at the Department of Implantology and Prosthetic Dentistry at ACTA, while working in a private practice. And he has also founded the Triadontics Academy. It's for the modern dentist, and he teaches their courses in digital dentistry, in implantology, and in prosthodontics. And as I already said, there's so much more to tell about you, Bassam, but I think that would probably fill this whole hour. So that's why I will not spend too many words. If I missed something really important you want to say, feel free to tell our participants. I'm really happy to have you here today. This webinar will also be recorded, so you can watch it later if you want to listen to some important parts again, or if somebody couldn't participate, then it will be available for them. But now I really want to give the word to you, Dr. Bassam Hassan. Thank you very much for joining the Morita Academy today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sarah. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the invitation, Sarah and Hannah. You forgot something very important. I'm now a key opinion leader for Morita. So actually the latest and the highest honor, because it took the longest to achieve. More than 20 years I've been working with CBCT from Morita, and only now I might assume the podium. Like you said, we're going to be discussing um, implementing digital workflow in your own practice. And in my opinion, the key word here is it's in your practice. So you should be someone who's either, let's say, has his own practice, someone is like thinking about getting a practice, or you're not an associate, because most of the associates, unfortunately, nowadays don't really have the choice to choose their own equipment, software, or digital workflows. But that if you are working digital up to this point and you want to switch digital and you're thinking about the digital workflow, there is a lot to consider. And that's why it's not a webinar of only one session, but we're doing a webinar series discussing different topics. For me, like I said, like Sarah introduced, I've been working with digital dentistry for more than 18, 19 years. Well, I'm clocking 20 years in June. I finished my PhD on the applications of cone beam CT in 2010. But I've been involved in digital dentistry for a long, long time, since the beginning of the technology with the intraoral scanning, CBCT, facial scanning. If it happened, if it existed, we worked with it. And the digital workflow is, of course, is a very complex picture. And it starts actually before even the patient walks into the practice. Like if you look at like your own journey right now, you most probably are already working digital, because if you see the digital contact points when the patient comes in, how does he come in? Like, he hears about the practice or he gets recommended by someone. He starts his own research and scheduling, and then he comes into the practice. He get welcomed by your reception, get admitted to the practice. Then you prepare the case, you give an advice, you get a treatment, and then you follow up the case. And in this analog workflow, you already have too many digital touch points, starting from homepage that you should have if you have your own practice, social media presence, unfortunately, this thing which is called the SEO, the search engine optimization, in which you keep dancing for Google and you hope that it trains somehow. Advertisement, when the patient comes in, you already have digital medical history sheet. So you're already working digital, like, you're doing so much digital before even the patient comes in to the practice. And you will notice, I repeat this quite a lot, is that the issue of specialization, or like, you need to have hyper focus. Like in our case, for me as a prosthodontist who specializes in implant surgery, I focus on Google. And why do I focus on Google? Because people who come for full arch rehabilitations, they, like, according to research, 90% they are on Google. They are Googling for all on four, all on six. They are looking for full arch treatments, fixed bridges with no palatal coverage. They are not on TikTok dancing, and they are not on Instagram, like, showing beautiful veneers. They are on Google. Why? Because it takes nowadays a lot of time and effort and money that I need to invest to pay Google to push me a little bit up, like in the ranking, just to be visible to those people. And that's why, for instance, like for people, let's say, doing Hollywood Smile, it's a totally different a client base. They are totally different population. They are existing on a different social media. They are not on Google. They are really on Instagram, doing before and after these amazing experiences. But that's, for instance, not my focus. And the same thing with the digital tools. And if you look at the digital tools that you have at your disposal nowadays, is that you have too many tools, intraoral scanners, 3D printers, mill units, facial scanners. You need to deal with design software, with digital planning software, DSDs, digital smile designs, and jaw motion trackers if you are into functional dentistry, implant position capture with photogrammetry. So you need to carve, let's say, a workflow for yourself that will work only for you and work for your business case, not like what an orthodontist next door is doing while you're a prosthodontist, or not like what an endodontist is doing with digital workflow while you are, let's say, a gnathologist. You really need to make the workflow for you. And if you take, there is a take-home message today, if you only remember one thing from this webinar, and this is this: try not to purchase the entire workflow from one company, because no, yeah, because no single company is able to sustain a consistent level of innovation and keep track of all the latest developments in the entire digital workflow. There is a reason why Morita does cone beam CT scanners, and that is basically they've been doing this for more than 25 years, and they have experiences and expertise in cone beam that are really difficult to compete with. Same thing applies to 3Shape with the intraoral scanner. Same thing applies to IMS iCore with milling, or to Exocad with designing. So it's difficult nowadays to resist the temptation to take everything from one company, like, Select Workflow, for instance, because it's too much, and you get lost if you do not have the discipline to inform yourself about the different possibilities available to you. So that's why you give in and you give up and you try to just go with one single workflow from one company. But trust and stay assured that is not the best thing, the best choice you have, because you will need to make distinction between, very early, is that if you're going to stay in partial cases, or you're also going to full arches as well. And if you're sticking in partial arches and partial cases, then life with digital workflow becomes simpler and easier. But you can never know if you are going to step up and start doing full arches within a year or two. So you cannot make this assumption that I only want to do Emacs crowns, or I can do only facings, or I can only do 3 unit bridges. Regardless, digital workflow has traditionally worked better for smaller cases than for larger cases in the past. And if you consider a scan like this, that the one I am showing here, this is like one of the first, let's say, true color scanners that we had in 2018. And I remember at the time, they told me that you cannot really scan movable gingiva. So anything that moved, any like a free mucosa, or you have all those extractions which are done by surgeons, and then they suture part of the cheek on the crest of the bone. So this part of the gingiva is moving, and that means you need to use a bit your fantasy to try to get a design estimating a little bit where the pontic is going to be. And in this case, I got lucky, and then looks quite well. We never had issues with scanning teeth since I think more than 12 years, but we had a lot of issues with the scanning gingiva. When we went to implants, also the first thing that we could conquer was the same day immediate loading or same day single implant cases, in which you do have many teeth references, and then you could scan quite easily. You have neighboring teeth, you have only a single gap, you only one implant. You can design it, you can then 3D print a temporary crown. Then this is nothing new. This is basically been going on for, I think, 5-6 years already. I think temporary crown restorations appeared in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And you can print a crown. You have a tie base. You cement it, glue it together, and it fits like glove. Fits perfect. And you can go to the mouth, and you can insert the restoration. So same days, partial cases. That's actually what most people think about when they think about going digital, because like if you are already outsourcing those cases to the lab, then you're already losing a lot of revenue, and you are becoming highly uncompetitive, because if you have 3D printer in the practice and intraoral scanner, and you have the ability to source in a designer, then nowadays also with AI, then you can do this stuff within a couple of hours. Of course, why, let's say, most clinicians, well, let's say about like my age group, I mean above 40, who let's say having their own practice and they haven't really invested in digital, or they're just now learning about digital workflows. What happened is that they have lived through the transitional period, which is the period between 2007, I would say, to 2018, in which um, uh, uh, we had lots of difficulties with treating full arches and complex therapy domains, like the cases that you see in front of you. Consider like case number one, most probably those teeth are mobile. The patient has unstable bite, difficult, get a good bite registration in this case. You have the tongue, which is large and it's sticking out at the molar area. Consider case number two was very challenging for intraoral scanners, still challenging for intraoral scanners to scan an edentulous ridge in which you have very little references. Case three, in which now you have the implants already installed in place. You need to get the position of the implant quite very precisely. Case number four, in which it looks very simple. You have fixed bites situation. You also have teeth, lots of references, but you have malocclusion. So at the time, any digital workflow would require first an orthodontic treatment, and some orthodontic treatments for cases like these were not really digital because you want to go with the brackets. So it did not really work with digital in the beginning. Cases like the one number 5, in which you need to redo a restoration, or if you have one implant which is loss of a scatter on a cone beam, um, um, pose challenges for a cone beam CT made to scan a case like this. Case number 6, in which you have a combination of everything like crowding, over eruption, bad restorations, um, uh, made it all difficult for digital tools to achieve like an integral and a complete digital workflow. But with teeth, things were simple. This case is, I think, like 5, 6 years ago. We were already able to do a digital smile design, doing facial scan, combining facial scan with intraoral scan, with cone beam CT scan, and with jaw motion tracking, all at the same time. Um, um, this was necessary at the time to do good tooth wear rehabilitation, because you needed to have a way to open the bite and to check the dynamic articulation of the patient. And for that, we need to have a jaw motion tracker. The cone beam would give you an indication about the morphology of the roots. And of course, we had an implant here at position 3-6. What I'm saying is that when we started doing full arch rehabilitations, the first thing we went to do were, let's say, the dentulous cases, not the edentulous cases, cases like these. And 5, 6 years later, fast forward, this is a case which was done, I think, in practice beginning of this year, or I don't know, I think beginning of this year. You don't even have to go for a 3D DSD. We are doing now with a digital smile design, with like, because it's like so accurate now, the matching between an intraoral scan and a facial scan. You can do a digital smile design even on 2D pictures. You open the bite. The bite opening, if you have a tooth wear case, is very precise with the virtual articulator. You can do your digital mock-up, and this is 3D printed hybrid ceramic material, Ceramco Crown Tech material, in which I remember at the time that like to do cases like these, it took about 6 hours of planning and discussions with the lab, and to do this freehand with composite, usually between, if you're quick, like 9 to 10 hours, and if you do it, let's say, very precise, it takes about like 12 to 14 hours, like 2 to 3 days. And now you can basically cement all those nano-prep restorations, which they look fantastic, indirect hybrid ceramics, or like nano composite, how you want to call them, glaze them, and it's like 4 or 5 hours and you're done. So dentate cases, even the full arches, um, um, they became the first ones accessible to the digital workflow. The difficulty, of course, we had was in scanning any mobile tissue. And that's because the way intraoral scanners work, because they have a very limited field of view. So if you have the floor of the mouth, as you can see in this case, and patient, wants to swallow, you're invading the sulcus, and then they raise the floor of the mouth, then you'll lose the image. And there were many techniques to deal with this issue. One of the ones that I love the most, that is like which we did today as well, in which you scan take an intraoral scan for whatever you can, like the lower front teeth, and then you take an alternate impression. You don't pour out the cast that we did in the past, but you reverse the intraoral scan, and the impression is a negative of the arch. Then you have just to scan the impression, and you can combine with your intraoral scan, and then you can go from there. So that actually solved an issue for getting a mucostatic impression, functional impression, that the one that you see in the front of you. And we had also lots of issues in large cases where we had insufficient bite references, like in cases like these, in which You have an overjet, overbite, pathological tooth migration, and no molars. Basically, when you only scan the front teeth, then you'll get those perforations between the lower and the upper arch. And of course, this bite is wrong. But this is actually the situation that we had to deal with for many, many years with intraoral scanners. And this resulted in an open bite because usually when you correct this in the software, it's like you cut these intersections and then you open the bite in the software. You are like almost always wrong with the bite, with having a heavy occlusion in the molar area and an open bite in the front. So, and that was the thing that persisted for many years. And we had to go through multiple bite registrations to reach an acceptable occlusion. And I did not scan the patient in this way. I did not design the bridge the way you see it on the left. But this is how it was fitting in the mouth because the bite registration was not really correct. And it took multiple scans, and those multiple scans and those multiple bite registration, you need to register 3, 4 times before you could get an acceptable bite registration. But what does the literature say about bite registration? Now, if you look at the recent literature, you see like in vivo precision of digital bite registration for full arches. They did with this recent an RCT, a randomized controlled clinical trial. The digital full arch bite registration is significantly more accurate than digital quadrant arch scan and conventional bite. And that is really significant. For many years, we were maintaining the view that bite registration with intraoral scanners is wrong and is inferior to taking like an upper and lower impressions, having model and making a scan in the lab. But recent literature is proven now what everyone else already knows, and that is intraoral scanners are becoming amazing, have become amazing in capturing bite. I mean, conventional, let's just be honest, was not always great. We used to roll the dice. I mean, of course, if you are very careful about everything and all the steps, and you're quite experienced, you will get very good occlusion using conventional workflow. But at the time I did this case, I was already an EPA certified prosthodontist. I was already a specialist. And when I did this case, this is the bite I had on model, and this is the bite I had intraorally. It's just because there are multiple steps involved. You are pouring out a cast, you're doing mounting an articulator, and there are many chances for an error. And also your technicians are getting worse and worse by the day because everyone is going digital. So all those like extremely experienced technicians in the past, unfortunately, they are retiring. The reality is now intraoral scanners have solved the bite registration issue. So for full arches, I mean, if you're doing full arch restoration, upper and lower, zirconia and zirconia, there is nowhere to hide. It needs to be very good. You can register the bite very well with intraoral scanners. And as long as the patient starts from a stable intercuspal position, I think that it's safe to say that in most cases, if you have at least like 4 or 5 teeth occluding, you should be fine with having an excellent bite registration. So for full arches, the issue was solved with the bite, which was an issue for a long, long time. And this advancement happened because of advancement in resolution, in image stitching technology, and in post-processing. No other technology within the dental digital workflow has advanced as quickly and as um, let's say immensely as intraoral scanning technology, uh, especially with the new generation of IO scanners, in which they rely on AI for doing automated stitching. So the stitching is not done by the processor of the computer anymore, but is like machine learned stitching, and is detecting features, detecting areas of the scans, and it can understand that this is like a palette, this is like the tuberosity area, and it has a lot of robustness to artifacts and occlusions. So if you have any artifacts, it can even detect that you're wearing gloves. It can immediately eliminate the gloves from the scan. This is amazing. I remember like when I did my first intraoral scan, full arch, more than 10 years ago, it took like longer than an hour to do. So you have adaptive stitching strategies, and you have continuous improvement, because all those thousands of scans we are making, they are being saved on the cloud, and these are used to continuously improve the stitching strategies of intraoral scanners. So I think the challenge that we always had for intraoral scanning, which was like the benchmark for intraoral, could you like capture in a full arch implant position? And in a dentulous scan strategies, where we started, let's say, from a denture that the patient was wearing or a hybrid denture. Um, like I said, the first issue we had, could we actually register the correct bite of the patient? And like I said, this is very much certain nowadays that you can register the bite, static bite, with intraoral scans very, very, very well. When you have a hybrid denture, you want to make a bridge like we are doing in this case. The way we do it is that we cut the palate, so, the palatal coverage of the denture, and then we provide some landmarks, like some fiducial markers on the palate. And then you can scan this as a preoperative situation, because using the old denture, you can get the bite very well. And then you kind of clip or crop out the denture, and then you keep the palate and the fiducial markers on the palate for as a common reference. Then from there, you can start scanning the gingival healers, or in this case, the multi-unit abutments, starting from the palate. And to have the ability to scan, I don't know if you remember the first case I showed you, in which I said like we had difficulty to scan movable mucosa. Look at the amount of mucable mucosa that you have, free gingiva that you have in this case. And if you have like the insertion of the mucosa very much crystal, and you can scan it perfectly. This is something amazing. I really still in awe about that, how far have we come with intraoral scanning. And then once you have scanned your gingival formas, you need, of course, to identify the position of the implants, and just identify the implants, the positions, and then you can scan the scan bodies, and then now you have the bite, and you have the implant position, and you have the implant position with respect to the bite. And doing scan of the scan bodies, it requires a skill, it requires training. You need to go like 360 degrees around the scan body while maintaining the palate as a reference, because all those scan bodies, they are identical. So if you jump from one scan body to the next and they are identical, then they will just confuse the scanner to see which scan body you are actually scanning at this point. So you always have to scan, go back to the palate, and then scan again, and then go to the palette, and then go and scan again, and go back to the palette. And then you can design. And I remember like this used to be a quite stressful moment for me. If I have an intraoral scan of full arch on like 4 to 6 implants, is this going to fit? Is going to fit? Now is actually not really, I don't really give it a second thought. They always do. They fit. Uh, um, this one actually was placed by my associate today. And you can see like it's fitting beautifully, just like it was designed, completely digital, nothing extra was required. And this 3D printed temporary material, which is the same material that was used uh, to do the temporary crown on an implant. Now you can print those stamps within like half an hour to 45 minutes. Then you have a full arch 3D printed. You can cure it, glaze it, color it. Uh, um, we prefer to use those titanium copings, and you can screw it. So scanning, intraoral scanning of like full arches is quite feasible, is quite possible actually. Um, but that does not mean that because you have AI and because you have an amazing scanning technology, very good processing and post-processing, good stitching, that you need to abandon experience. You still have to be experienced to do those kind of scans. You need to know what you're doing. There needs to be a good workflow, a good scan strategy, as we used to call it in the past. Because if you just go randomly from one place to the next, um, you will confuse the scanner. It doesn't matter if the scanner is intelligent. Um, it's still a scanner with a limited field of view because it's an intraoral scanner, so it's a very small field of view. So if you are scanning like 2 scan bodies and then you're not going 360 around the scan body, but you're going like buckle from one side to the arch of the arch to the other side of the arch, you will start confusing the scanner because you are not going back to the palette to use it as a common reference. You don't have references on the palette. You're not going back to the palette. You're just going in random directions, and you're hoping that the scanner will compensate for your lack of experience, and it can't. And that's the reality that this is a scan which was made by a young associate we have in the practice who just finished his studies in the industry like last year. And he just thought that I will grab the scanner wand and I will be able to scan and I will get a perfect um, intraoral scan, and I will be able to make a bridge. Um, the thing is, the danger with this is that actually is that he didn't even see the mistakes that he made with the scan, and he just sent the scan, relied heavily on the post-processing of the scanner. Luckily, I saw it when the designer noticed that the scan is wrong. So, so even though we have progressed in the last 15 years with intraoral scanning quite a bit, you still need to know like sound scanning principles. You still need to know what the scanner is doing, uh, what is the stitching strategy, and how to scan for full arches. But however, like I have to say, if you're experienced, I mean, things really, really became amazing. I mean, this 3 years, 5 I have now, I'm still astonished that I'm able to do with AI assisted scanning a ridge, which is very, very shallow. I mean, I don't really have a very high ridge in this case, and I have a lot of mobile tissue. But if you are, let's say, very careful in scanning and you're going slowly and you understand that there are like landmarks that you need to keep track of, you need to stabilize the arch, that you don't lose your references, you will be able even to scan the lower jaw with a shallow floor of the mouth. And this is something that it used to be I mean, science fiction, just like 5 or 7 years ago. I mean, very few cases you would get lucky to do it, but in most cases, you wouldn't be able to do those kind of scans on routine basis, the way we do them now on routine basis, like on daily basis. So, intraoral scanning with AI stitching really improved like the application of intraoral scanning, improve the accessibility, like improve the accessibility of digital workflow uh, in the practice. I mean, I wouldn't be able to implement a digital workflow in the practice if I had to pour out impressions and make models and wait for the model to set 3 hours and then or go quick set and then put on an articulator and scan it in the lab scan. Really, the key point we had, could we do intraoral scanning? Could we do intraoral scanning in all situations? And we almost could, almost could. Because if now I can do an AI-assisted uh, lower scan body scan, an edentulous scan body in which I have like uh, no references. There's literally no references here for the scanners to work with. There's just the little bit of the buccal sulcus, labial sulcus, and I have to be very slow, try to maintain a very steady hand while I'm moving on top of the scanner, on top of the scan bodies, trying to not to confuse the scanner. Uh, and it's very difficult to do a scan like this, really difficult, uh, but it's possible. I mean, even with a difficult situation like this one, if you are really let's say taking this very slowly and you know what you're doing and you're keeping your references and you understand how the stitching process of the intraoral scanner works, you could actually scan this one as well. And again, this was impossible to do just mere few years back, that we couldn't even imagine doing scans like this, in which like there are no references in the jaw. There are like many techniques to do this, in which you needed to connect the multi-unit abutments or connect the scan bodies together or glue them with acrylic or with composite, or do like floss in between, or do frameworks scanning. But I just want to show that in almost an impossible situation, you're also able to obtain the scan body positions. So we've come a long way with edentulous jaw scans, with mobile tissue scanning, with bite registration. And that's all thanks to the recent improvements in intraoral scanning technologies. Um, like I said, I mean, the scan I made more than 10 years ago, I made it with a PhD candidate at the Department of Prosthodontics, because it took like more than 1 hour to, and I don't know how many repeats, to try to capture an intraoral scan position of 6 implants with 3M true definition scanner, scanner which does not exist on the market anymore. And now, same situation with a 3Shape scanner with the Trios 5. I mean, even a beginner like is able to scan with it and gets like decent results. Of course, um, there are situations, especially like if you work with immediate loading cases, and then you have like bone reduction in the lower jaw, and then you have a lot of mobile tissue, then it's really difficult to do intraoral scanning of the multi-unit abutments. And in those cases, there are other solutions that you can use, like for instance, the one we use here in the practice is OptiSplint, in which they are scan bodies that we connect together using a honeycomb metal mesh, and then we glue them together. Then we take them out and then we scan them separately, and then we can design You can see like you can design a temporary that will fit perfectly. And this is, I would say, like an impossible to scan situation to do an intraoral scan of. This is really challenging. So some exceptions apply, and that's why there are other technologies that you can use for capturing human positions where intraoral scanner is failing you, or is where it's not enough. And you can use the OptiSplint, or you can use photogrammetry like Big Dental, or Icon 4D, or N-Sequence. And there are many, many solutions coming up, like popping up every day. I mean, the future will tell in which direction the industry will go forward. But I'm really quite excited to be able to, let's say, do most of the cases using just my intraoral scanner. And in some cases, I would need to acquire something more, like extraoral scanning or an OptiSplint solution. So like I said, when it comes to scanning, I mean, those are the two scanners that we are working with in the practice, the Trios 5 from 3Shape and the Medit i700. For many years, I preferred to work with the Medit scanner because the workflow was completely open. I could add additional scans, I could reverse the scans, combine with impressions, a very open workflow. And I didn't really um, let's say, pay much attention to the evolution of the 3Shape scanner because the workflow was a little bit closed for my liking, and really geared towards working with the 3Shape design software, which I didn't work with because I was an ExoCAD user. But then with the introduction of the Trios 5, the workflow is completely open now with the new like software installation. And although it still has a little bit of, let's say, greases to straighten, to straighten, as they say, or like there are like some issues with the workflow. I still prefer the Medit workflow more or less, but the reliability of the Trios and the amazing stitching quality of dental scans going through blood, going through sutures, going through stitches, really is, I mean, imposing. I wouldn't be able to reject the 3Shape anymore because it really demands respect. It's really an amazing scanner and is really very reliable. So that's why we have both. We have one for dentate cases and one we're actually using mostly for more advanced, complex, or edentulous cases or difficult scans. So that's what concerns intraoral scanning for me. I would like to take a moment now to switch to the world of cone beam CT imaging. Now, the picture that you see at the top is the Morita Quitomo device, the 170, and that was installed in, I think, in 2007 at the department where I was working in Amsterdam. And I took this X-ray in 2009, and actually that's like 15 years ago. And the one that you see is the VeraView X800, which is the Morita machine, cone beam CT machine I have in the practice. And the X-ray you see it was taken yesterday. And the first thing that you would notice between the two images is that actually there is very little difference. So we had excellent image quality with the, let's say, high-end cone beam CT systems more than 15 years ago. They did not approve, and for the same reason that CT scanning remained stable for the last 20 years. And the reason is that the technology relies on rotation of an arm and an X-ray beam and a fixed kilo voltage and a host of technical factors in which the image you're getting has reached more or less, let's say, a stable resolution, stable image quality. You cannot get soft tissue with cone beam. You will never be able to replace CT for an MRI. It's not an ultrasound. It's just that how the technology works. But many things have improved. I'm not saying that it did not improve in the past 15 years. Many things improve, but not the image resolution itself. Uh, um, Again, if we go back to the device 15 years ago and now, and in this image, we were looking at volume rendered image. And you need to understand the difference between volume rendered image and a surface image. A volume rendered image, you know that cone beam CTs are volumes. So just like if you have a black box, and then you have voxels inside, like, pixels, but in a 3D. And a volume rendered image is just a way to look at an image. How you project light to the image and how you visualize it. But if you want to do anything with a cone beam, you need to segment the image and from the volume, and you need to create a surface, and that was called the surface model. More than 15 years ago, surface models for an edentulous case were very high in quality. The problems were when we had teeth, of course. Uh, if you look at the difference I was telling you about between a volume and a surface, the one on the left is a volume, is a way to visualize. It was always looking nice. But then when you started wanting to do something with the image, like create aligners or separate the roots from the bone, do segmentation, which is separation of hard tissue and bone roots from soft tissue to create like a model, point to cloud model. We struggled with doing that. Why? Because there was the segmentation thresholding issue in which cone beam CT scans, the values of the gray values of the scanner, they were not homogeneous. So if you underestimated, you ended up with a lot of noise. If you have overestimated when you're doing the segmentation, you would have ended up with many holes. And this was an issue which remained persistent across the industry. Like I said, consider the cone beam CT scan to be like a box. The scan you make like a volume. And then you have a histogram. Um, it's very difficult to explain what the histogram is, but just let's say it's a distribution of the density of the materials that you have. So if you have like air in the cone beam CT scan, because the air is surrounding the patient, you have also the fatty tissue, you have the soft tissue, you have the bone, you have the teeth, and then also you have the restorative materials, zirconia, titanium, what have you, amalgam. So if you select a threshold, then like you say, I don't want to see the air, I don't want to see the box, I just want to see the soft tissue, then you're at the soft tissue level. And then if you continue selecting a different threshold, then you will start removing the soft tissue and exposing a little bit of the bone itself. The challenge was and has always been is like where to put the threshold value that you isolate the bone and the teeth from the surrounding soft tissue. Moreover, where do you put the value to separate the teeth, segment the teeth from the bone? To do orthodontics, for instance, or to do bone level surgical guides or bone supported surgical guides. So this segmentation issue was a very, very complicated thing to deal with. And it did not, it took a lot of time for it to be solved. And unlike intraoral scanning, in which there has been significant improvements in like the hardware in terms of resolution and stitching accuracy, with cone beam, we had different advancements. We had improved imaging technology, which means that the sensors became more sensitive to the X-ray. You needed much, much less radiation to achieve a high quality image. And of course, I'm talking about high-end models. There are still lots of, let's say, average and low quality models on the market in which you need a lot of radiation. You don't have very good sensors, and you only get an average image. And of course, I think the biggest thing that happened is that The machine I showed you 15 years ago at the department, it was very expensive, and it took a large footprint. And now we could achieve the same thing in a practice setting with a smaller footprint and with much reduced price. And this is not nothing. So intraoral scanners, let's say, maintain more or less similar price range for the past 15 years. I mean, they go like 20, 25, 30. If it's bad, 12. If it's good, it's 35. The, but they were in that range all the time. Cone beam CTs, no. They were like 200,000, 250, and you know, they were like serious numbers you're talking about. And you had a much larger machine, higher radiation level. So all of this improved, became the same quality with less footprint, reduced price, and that's because of improved imaging technology. And of course, AI assisted segmentation. The limitations of cone beam is that, of course, the one on the left is your ideal patient, is your, let's say, dentate patient and who has no restorations. And you're making a cone beam, I don't know, for orthognathic or orthodontic purposes. But in the world of prosthetic rehabilitation, we had a disaster beam, and that is the metal artifacts that we had from full arch zirconium and metal porcelain bridges. So in that respect, I'm happy to say that there has been some improvement in which the scanners, let's say, improved their imaging technology to a point that you could actually reduce the metal artifacts. But, and this is the example I'm showing you, and this is not from 10 years ago. This scan I received from my colleague, like I think 5 years ago, 5 days ago, in which he's working with another scanner, and you can see, like, you know, what he wants to do is that he wants to design a surgical guide in the upper arch, but you know, the scan is made full arch, upper and lower scan, so the field of view is much larger. And in the software, you can basically tell the software, I don't want to load the lower arch, load in just the upper arch, because I'm only interested in the upper arch. This is called volume cropping. Remember, cone beam CT scan is a volume. So you're cropping the volume, you load in less of the original volume for you to examine. And now you will see, like, you know, what I always do is that if I import an intraoral scan, oh, sorry, a cone beam CT scan, I never touch it. I never touch the surface. I never adjust the histogram. The thing I want to see, and that's the way I judge the quality of the scan and sometimes the scanner, is I import an STL, and nowadays I just see what the AI is doing. So if the AI matches the scans together, that means the scan is done very well. Some scans, they might look acceptable diagnostically, but because the patient has moved a lot during the scan, or because this scanner does not have, let's say, shortened scan setting, does not allow you for doing half a scan, half rotation scans, like 7, 8, or 9 seconds. Even the scan that looks by post-processing that is acceptable, the AI will have difficulty in creating surfaces to match with the intraoral scan, just like you'll see in this case. So in this case, we're going to tell we are interested in loading an intraoral scan. We're telling this is the maxilla, and now the AI is trying to do the alignment, which is automated. It's an automated process. I'm not doing anything. And then you can see in the lower right screen that the scan is completely wrong. And if you look at this area, is completely wrong. Now, why is that? I will show you the example, next example to this, in which the metal artifacts were worse. The patient had much larger bridge construction, but the matching automatic matching was better. Why is that? Is because this scan is not optimized. I don't know, because maybe either the scan is not optimized or it's because the scanner is not optimized. What does that mean? It means that this is a scan which was probably done with an extended scan setting, so maybe 25, 30 seconds, in which the patient had the possibility to move, and then the software tried to adjust for the motion by doing motion post-processing, motion correction. Maybe the signal to noise ratio is very poor. But for whatever reason, even if the scan can fool you as a human, the scan cannot fool the AI algorithm, which is now doing the segmentation of the CBCT image and doing the segmentation matching with the intraoral scan. So long story short, you end up with poor matching. And then what you'll have to do is that you have to add your own points. And it's very difficult to identify common points between the intraoral scan and the cone beam. But you try to do your best to identify those fiducial markers and then try to get the scan to an acceptable alignment. And this is something that is in your control. If you are working with a good machine, you have good scan settings, this should happen by itself, happens automatically. In the past, we did a lot of research about the accuracy of the matching between, or registration as we call it, or the matching between intraoral scan and cone CT scan. This is by my colleague, Dr. Flügge, and we did in, I think, 2017, 18, I don't remember. It's a long time ago, in which if you accept the default segmentation of the scanner, so if the software proposes a certain segmentation and you import the intraoral scan, and you had certain registration precision. But if you want to do it very well for doing guided surgery, you needed to do manual segmentation of the cone beam. So you need to clean the surfaces yourself, do the segmentation, outline everything. It took hours to do. Now I'll show you. This is a scan we did during course in the weekend, and I didn't do anything. The only thing I did is that I already started with a better starting point. What is my better starting point? I started with half arch scan. So I already have, instead of doing, let's say, 8 by 8 or 10 by 10 centimeter scan, I'm doing 8 by 5, which is half the arch, which means I'm using a medium field of view, which means already I have a better resolution image than the scan before. So when I import this scan, although this scan is has more scattering, and you can see here how big the scattering is. You see here, see how huge the scattering that you have, and see how much scattering that you have. Still, the AI nowadays, which does this automated alignment, is able to segment in a better way. It does not seem very logical that the AI is able to do automated segmentation, although you have more artifacts. But it makes sense, because if you have an image which is very unsharp for you as a human, because you are using default segmentation, just look at how beautiful outlined the restoration is on the cone beam. Look at this fantastic outline that you have on the cone beam. This is no problem for an AI algorithm to do machine learning. Machine learning is that it will detect an outline, and if you can see it as a tooth, the machine will see it, the AI will see it as a tooth as well. So it did automated segmentation, although this case is worse, is much worse. You have, if you look at the default segmentation, is much, much worse than the case before. And I didn't do anything. I did not adjust the other scan. I did not adjust this one. I'm just accepting what the AI is doing. Um, why? Is because I'm using here a very short scan time. I'm using 8 seconds, 9 seconds, because I'm using 180 degree scanning, not 360 degree scanning. I'm using a half field of view. I'm instructing the patient, like when I do the scan, when I press the button, please hold your breath, because your biggest enemy in cone beam is motion artifacts, is not voxel size, is not pixels, is nothing. And then you see, like we did the segmentation, everything else falls into place. We did a digital design of the case, and you might wonder like how precise that is. I can tell you how precise. This is the bridge preoperatively. Um, Very poor aesthetic, and then you have two front teeth with horizontal root fracture and with periapical infection. We did our digital smile design and virtual extraction of the teeth, and then actual extraction of the teeth, immediate implant, immediate loading, long implants, high primer stability, and immediate temporary bridge. So I am putting my faith into this surgical guide. Um, for me, this is not a joke. I need to be sure that the registration between my intraoral scan and my cone beam CT scan is accurate. Because if that's not accurate, I will not be able to trust drilling into an extraction socket. And if I'm drilling a little bit too buccal or a little bit too palatal, it can be a disaster for the case in which I already promised the patient we're going to be doing immediate loading. So understand in medical imaging the principle of GIGO or GIGO as they call it, which is garbage in, garbage out. If you start with garbage information in, you start with garbage information, you end up with garbage information out. So um, uh, same thing, you'll see like most of my scans, they are always half arch. I never do upper and lower unless I have to. And sometimes if I have a lot of bridges, I prefer to do one scan upper and one scan lower, because I need to have a medium field of view. I want to have my field of view only for one arch. So I start with a better image to give the AI a head start. And I always go for 180 degree scan, which is half of the rotation, not 360, which is full rotation scan, to reduce the scan time. So I reduce the chance of having motion artifacts. And then I do not care. Like, see, look at this case. It's a disaster. See, like how much metal you have in this case, metal artifacts, like how much scattering you have. And still the AI, I'm not doing anything. I'm not touching the scan. I'm not doing any adjustments. I'm just telling it simply segment the bone, and is able to do that because I am starting with an image that the AI can understand very well. What you see here, outlining the red on each slide, this is now the AI is doing by itself. This is called segmentation, isolating the bone from surrounding tissue. This I used to do myself. Probably 1 year of my life has already been like wasted doing segmentations. And I mean, my entire existence, for my PhD, for my master's, for my research, I was the segmentation guy. And now AI took that job from me, so I don't have to segment anymore. I cannot segment. I cannot compete with AI. There used to be companies that you had to send the CT scan to so that they segment for you. Imagine that. You cannot imagine that because now you have this one. So, but try to imagine. And then if you do automated bone segmentation, you can do extraction sockets and you can start placing the implants in crazy places. Because you already understand what you're doing. You're already having 3D printed skull, where you are placing the implant, you're practicing on model beforehand. So the two main things when considering cone beam CT images is that you need to understand how does a cone beam CT image work. And I think most of us know this more or less, but on a theoretical level, it works like, you have an X-ray beam, and then you have a detector, and then you take an X-ray shot, a two-dimensional image from one side, and then the detector rotates, and then you take another X-ray from another angle, and then it rotates, and then you take the X-ray from a third angle. And then what you do is that you back project it, basically. So you project those images back, so you reconstruct the image. And it used to be like, if you're looking, it used to call the filtered back projection. I'm still called in CT scan, but cone beam is called Feldkamp algorithm. Um, if you have like this, let's say the original object, which is the one on the upper right, is like this circle. If you have only two projections of this, then you create a square. And if you have four projections, then you have like a star. And if you have eight, then you have like a better star, 16 and 32. So the more projections that you have, the better information, more information you have about the object that you are scanning. And all images are just approximation of reality. Reality is deformed, so the image that you see is never 100% representation of of whatever you are capturing, but it's an approximation. Uh, and this used to be a very big issue in cone beam CT, that you needed a lot of projections, many projections, and you need to give a lot of dose, a lot of radiation for you to be able to get a good image. Uh, this is because something called signal to noise ratio. What does that mean in reality is that every image has noise. If an image exists, it has noise. All images are noisy. Consider the image of this house. This house, the image you see is quite noisy because signal to noise ratio is 4. See what happens if I make the signal to noise ratio 8, and if I make it 20, and if I make it 80. I did not change the resolution of this image. This is exactly the same image here, and it became this. The only thing I did is I just improved the signal and I reduced the noise. And how do you reduce noise in cone beam CT scan? By giving more gas, by giving higher radiation. The more radiation you give, the less noise you have. And that was the unfortunate reality in the beginning of cone beam CT scanning, especially in orthodontic application of young adolescent. Um, there used to be machines that, I mean, they were like frying the patients, like 400 or 500 microsieverts, which was a huge, tremendous amount of radiation for a cone beam CT scan. And that has improved with low imaging, low dose protocols. The By having less number of rotations, by having improved signal to noise ratio, and also by not going for a large field of view, but going for a medium or small size, reducing the field of view, reducing the field that you are capturing, improved the image. But for me, something which is like almost mandatory when going for a cone beam CT scan is to have the option to have 180 rotation. What that does mean? It means that when the arm rotates around the patient, it does not capture image from every angle, but it skips angles and then takes it like every other angle, start to take an image. A 180 arm rotation means that I only need to have half an arm rotation to capture my image, means half of the dose almost, and half of the chance for the patient to move. Even if you do not care about radiation exposure to the patient, which actually you should, but even if you don't, you should care about short scan settings. because shortened time is the best chance that you have to have good image with no motion artifacts. And then if you're looking at the dose, you can just see like the amazing difference in those. Like if you go for a large field of view, and this is from the Morita itself, from the Vera view. If you go for the 15 by 14 at the 360 rotation, you can end up with 250 microsievert, which is something okay if you're doing orthognathic surgery, or if you're doing zygomas, or if you're doing subperiosteal implants. But look at the difference if you're doing, let's say, 4 by 8, which is like just one arch, like just upper or just lower, and you're doing with 180-degree scan, you can go for as low as 43 microsievert. And 43 microsievert, I remember panoramic X-rays being in the range of 20 to 25. So it's like doing little bit more, like a double, like two panoramics. So the 180 degrees scan is an amazing thing to have, and it's a must. You should have it because it really gives you the chance to have consistent good images independent of the patient is like an elderly person who is unstable, or if someone is like has a lot of saliva production, uh, um, because you are quick with the scan. Remember, patient motion, patient movement during the scan. So the scan I showed you, the first one. So the first one that the AI struggled to match with the intraoral scan is because the patient moved. And even though the image did not look like this, it was corrected by the software. The AI, when it's segmented, it was seeing double. They start to see double teeth. And that's patient movement during scan. And patients who move during scan, you can have the best scanner in the world, but if they move, you'll have a very poor image. So like I said, it used to be the case that we needed to do the bone segmentation with companies, like especially when we wanted to do titanium meshes to do like bone augmentation. We had to send the cone beam CT scan to a company so they could segment it for us. And the thing they used to ask for is exactly the same thing I am telling you right now. They used to tell me, please make the scan with a small field of view. I don't want to see the entire arch. I'm not interested. The smallest field of view that you can have. Try to be as quick as possible. Uh, and, and, uh, and I don't care about having a very high resolution image because I'm not using this high resolution image. Resolution is just in your head. Resolution has nothing to do with image quality in cone beam. Is signal to noise ratio or contrast to noise ratio. So but we used to do this, and then you can see like how beautiful those titanium meshes fitted the situations we could do bone augmentation, remove them, and place implants. So I think we are about time with the webinar. Yes, yes, actually we're perfect on time. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. In the next webinar, we'll be discussing a little bit more about the subject that everyone wants to do and everyone does not do. And that is actually guided surgery. But we'll be talking about pins and surgical guide design and all the stuff that you would like to have. Okay, I don't remember having this music and stuff, but it's been like a bit some time for me. Yeah, yeah. So we will be discussing the difference between doing bone supported guys, soft tissue supported guys, and doing also tooth supported guys, and the protocol that you have to do, what you need to pay attention to when doing guided surgery. And also, we will be discussing the difference between guided surgery and digital planning. I always say you don't have to do surgical guide for every case, but you need to do a digital planning for every case so that you actually know what you are going to be doing for this case. And we do like um, digital smile design a lot. And I will be also touching on dynamic occlusion and articulation in as secondary source of information, like do you really need them? When do you need them? And stuff like that. Oh, I cannot stop this one. Well, thank you very much for your attention. This is my email address if you want to get in contact with me. And the second webinar will be on 10th of July, 7 p.m. Central European Time. And this is the QR code. If you scan, you can register for the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bassam, for your really amazing and really instructive lectures.
Yes, thank you so much, Bassam. I'm really excited for the second webinar as well. Thank you for joining Morita Academy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.